Hi, my name is Isaac Archuleta, and today I want to talk a little bit about communication. Communication in relationships is a form of getting the other person to soothe us. We want to feel seen, heard, validated, belonging, but mostly we want to feel important to our partners or our loved ones. And communication is one of the most primary ways we try to feel understood. Generally, when we're talking, we're spewing out all of this important data, the details of our day, the details of our pain or the injustice, our frustrations, whatever it might be. And when someone is listening to the details of what we're describing, we kind of hop in as the listeners into the mode of wanting to rationalize people out of their own pain. So as the listener, we respond by saying things that refute what the person is saying, or we try to explain them out of it, and it just kind of mucks the whole situation up. As the speaker, instead of feeling understood and paid attention to, we just begin to feel ignored, invisible, and as though the other person thinks they're smarter than we are. So here's a couple of tips to help keep communication flowing nice and smooth. The first one is, when you are the speaker, to use your primary emotions. When I think about communication, I want to think about it as though there's two layers that kind of run every time we're communicating something. The top layer is the data we're speaking, the information we're trying to communicate, and the ways that we have been heard throughout the day. The second layer is our emotional data, the ways in which we may have felt powerless or hopeless or like a failure throughout the day. And as we give the details of the first layer, we forget to include the data of the second layer. So when you're speaking, try and infuse your primary emotions into your communication style. This is, of course, completely applicable for the listener as well. The listener, instead of collecting all of this data about what the person has lived through, I want you to be able to track the emotions on the second layer, even if they're not communicating them overtly for you. So when your partner comes home and they need to vent, or when your partner is maybe giving you some pretty tough criticism and it's kind of the beginning of that old repeating argument, one of the things that I want you to do is hop down into listening about the emotions they're communicating rather than the rationalizations or the rationale or the validity of their story. The third thing that will be super duper helpful is to activate what we call a boundary. A boundary is the process where we emotionally detach and create more objectivity in between the person speaking and ourselves. This is such a massive tool because that objectivity gives us the ability to listen to that second layer, to pay attention to all of those primary emotions without taking their data personally. If someone in their anger, my partner, let's say, came home and said, "Isaac, you made me so angry when you stood me up on that date, and how dare you leave me there for 15 minutes?" My default setting might be to go straight into protecting myself, to say, "Hey, wait, you don't understand what happened at work, that meeting ran late," or whatever it might be. But when I activate the boundary and I create some objectivity, I can hear the internal experience of my partner rather than the arrows they're throwing at me. I don't have such a need to protect myself. From behind such a boundaried space, it's easy for me to say, or easy for me to listen to rather, the primary emotions that are underneath my partner's details, all of those accusations, and I can hear that he probably feels lonely, invisible, unimportant, frustrated, which ultimately tells me that he's feeling pretty insignificant when it comes to how I see him. When I can reflect back, and this is the fourth piece, what he's describing, now we're kind of hitting that juicy spot. For me to begin to hear objectively what he has been experiencing, whether it's true or not, whether those primary emotions are accurate or not, I have the ability to track with him and then empathize to say, "Babe, when I stood you up at that restaurant, I'm so completely sorry. I have my reasons, but what I'm hearing more than anything is that you felt insignificant and really frustrated with me." When we're communicating and we need to apologize, I like to call it the 5-prong apology. The first part of this apology is saying, "This is what I did. This is how it hurt you. This is how I got there in terms of my own immaturity. This is how I will protect us from it never happening again, and I'm sorry. So it's something like, I stood you up today, and it probably left you feeling really, really invisible. I can imagine you sitting in that chair waiting for me, just hearing this dialogue of probably telling yourself that to me you're insignificant. You know what? I'm still working on my time management. I didn't assert my boundaries, and I didn't in that meeting when I could have. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to practice my boundaries so that I can show up in the way that reflects how much I love you. Babe, I'm totally sorry. We can only do this 5-prong apology when we're tracking the primary emotions. And even if our partner isn't spewing them out for us, they're still there. It just takes a little practice. And if there's something important that you want your partner to hear, be sure to identify your primary emotions before you approach your partner so that they're on the tip of your tongue and you can create an accurate emotional picture of what you have been telling yourself rather than what they have done, quote unquote, to you.